Thank you so much for watching Landumc Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. Indiana Jones made his big screen debut in a little movie that was done by Steven Spielberg called Raiders of the Lost Ark, released in 1981. George Lucas is the brainchild of the film, and it was all inspired by the adventure serials that he watched as a child. And Indy developed into a whip-cracking, wisecracking archaeologist who gets himself into and out of all sorts of situations in his quest for ancient artifacts. The film is now regarded as the pinnacle when it comes to action-adventure movie making. But believe it or not, Indy was almost 007. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were real good pals, and to get away from the stresses and strains of Hollywood, they would often vacation together. During the summer of 1977, Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind was in post-production, and with Star Wars releasing, they took off for a break in Hawaii. During this time, Spielberg was really enthused about the idea of making a James Bond movie. But George Lucas told him, "Hey, I got a different idea for you. I've got something better than Bond." He went on to tell Spielberg about an idea he had for an adventure series about a whip-cracking, globe-trotting archaeologist and his quest to hunt down mythical artifacts. And as they say, the rest is history. The name for the character came from Steve McQueen and George Lucas's dog. His dog was an Alaskan Malamute that was named Indiana. In honor of the pup, that was the first name that he came up with. And he also drew inspiration from a 1966 Steve McQueen movie called Nevada Smith. Lucas named his new character Indiana Smith. But Spielberg cited the similarities to the McQueen film and requested a name change. But he did agree that the surname should be a commonplace one like Smith. Lucas and writer Lawrence Kasdan suggested Jones, and Spielberg hopped on board with this idea. The concept art for the film ended up being very close to how it turned out. Lucas had very specific ideas in mind for Indiana's appearance, so he hired a conceptual artist to realize his vision. He took inspiration from Humphrey Bogart's character in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, and by doing so, he brought Indiana to life in 4 pieces of artwork: the fedora, the leather jacket, the whip, and the setting. Harrison Ford is truly iconic in this role, and you can't imagine anybody else playing that now. But at first, George Lucas wasn't keen on the idea. Ford and Lucas had already worked together on American Graffiti and Star Wars, and Lucas ended up telling Spielberg that he didn't want him to become his Robert De Niro. Other names that popped in frame while they were looking and talking about it was Nick Nolte, Steve Martin, Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, Jack Nicholson, and Mark Harmon. Eventually, Spielberg and Lucas settled on the man that they really wanted. They wanted Tom Selleck. He was then cast in the role, but due to scheduling conflicts with his hit TV show Magnum P.I., he had to pull out of it. As a result, Spielberg quickly cast Harrison Ford just 3 weeks before production began, and Selleck has hated the fact that he had to turn this role down ever since. The character of Marion Ravenwood was largely created by Lawrence Kasdan. Karen Allen was cast as Marion after Spielberg saw her in National Lampoon's Animal House. But they looked at a few other people. They looked at Maureen McCormick, Amy Irving, Jane Seymour, and Deborah Winger for this role. This fantastic name of this character was conceived by the writer Kasdan, whose own grandmother was called Marion. And on each day, on his way to the studio in Los Angeles, he would drive down a street called Ravenwood Court. It's pretty unbelievable now, but originally, Paramount didn't want Steven Spielberg to direct this film. Every one of his feature projects, to this point, had gone over budget, and when his movie 1941 bombed at the box office, the studio told George Lucas to find another director. They eventually relented when Lucas refused to make the picture without Spielberg. Being really aware of his reputation, Spielberg planned and blocked out every major set piece in the movie prior to shooting, using scale miniatures and models, saving the production crew hours of planning and of setup each day. The film came in under budget, and after it was a smash hit, no studio ever had any doubts about hiring Spielberg again. In the opening sequence, Indy is betrayed, but prior to that, he helps out his accomplice who's covered in tarantulas. Spielberg wanted these tarantulas everywhere on his body, but at first they didn't move. They brought in an animal consultant, and the reason they wouldn't move is because all the spiders were male. They found out that if they dropped in a female, the spiders would go completely wild. Now, director Spielberg ran out of snakes for the film. The famous scene where Indy has to confront his biggest fear in the Well of Souls, thousands of hissing and venomous snakes, was a logistical nightmare to arrange. He wanted between 7,000 and 10,000 snakes for the scene. He had producers scouring every pet shop in London because this scene was filmed at a soundstage there. However, once they had put all the snakes together on the set, Spielberg decided that's just not enough. We need more. But London was fresh out, so the crew found hundreds of yards of rubber hoses, cut them to the appropriate length, and dropped them right into the pit. Now, also in that scene, it needs to be known that Karen Allen used a stunt double for her scenes. They brought in Karen Allen's stunt double, but she was scared to death of the snakes too, and she refused to stand in the middle of them. They talked to the snake handler, who was named Stephen Edge, and Spielberg offered him the chance of doing this scene as a substitute for Karen Allen. They asked him would he be okay to shave his legs and put on a dress. So that's what he did. And it happens so quickly that you don't realize that you're not looking at Karen's legs, but you're actually looking at man legs. Take a look back at this grand film from the early 80s. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.